Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 829, and today's date is November 29th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, over the weekend, we've had another mass shooting at the Planned Parenthood. It was a standoff, and as soon as this was over, Obama came out and said enough is enough. Now, we have to understand there is legislation which is just sitting there in Congress, gaining no traction whatsoever. And Obama has made it his mission to basically push the legislation that's sitting there, which is the Dianne Feinstein bill, many other bills, and the UN Arms Treaty, through. He wants them through to try to get the weapons away from the people. This is his mission. So we are going to see many events occur up until the time where he's removed from office, which is next year. So we can expect all throughout next year more and more of these type of events, because their mission is to take away the weapons from the people before this entire system comes crumbling down. Now, as we know, since the false flag events in Paris, we know France has been pushing many different types of legislation to basically take the rights away from the people. And we see at this point that they are using these draconian laws to really make it difficult for the people to protest about certain things. And things the government does not like, they will enforce the laws. What we're seeing right now, France basically is using their State Emergency Act to limit the number of activists that want to protest the global warming summit. At least 24 environmental activists have been placed under a house arrest to avoid violent provocations while Paris is hosting a high-profile United Nations meeting on global warming. And we can see at this point, this is basically how government controls the people. Because of what happened with the terrorists, now they have the ability to say, okay, you can protest, you're fine with that. Oh, you cannot protest because we want this to pass. We want people to listen to what we're saying. We don't want the crowds out there basically taking their attention away from what's really going on here. And we can see this at this point is going to get worse and worse as time goes on. Now, the U.S. is going to be declaring new, broader support for Ukraine. As we know, the Minsk II ceasefire agreement expires the end of this year. We understand the United States and many other nations are in there training their armed guards. The Army, the National Guard, Special Forces, bringing in defensive, lethal weapons into Ukraine. We understand there's a power outage in Crimea. Shelling has begun back in Donetsk and Lugansk, all coming from the Kiev region, and we're seeing that this is accelerating at this point. And right now, Jeffrey Pyatt, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, says the U.S. government intends to continue assisting Ukraine on its path of transformation. And Obama, on the eve of Thanksgiving, signed the new defense bill, which gives $300 billion basically to Ukraine. So we can see how this is all starting to come together at this point. Now, as soon as Turkey shot down the Su-24, Turkey decided that they're not going to violate Greece airspace anymore. So ever since they shot it down, Turkish warplanes abruptly ceased violating Greek airspace after downing the Russian plane. Because Greece came out and called them on it and said, listen, you shot down a plane that was in the country for 17 or 10 seconds, like you said. Of course, as we know today, the plane never really violated the airspace. But if we go along with the Turkish story, and you shot it down, and we understand from Greece, they violated, just in the last year, thousands upon thousands of times. And guess what? Greece did not shoot them down whatsoever. Now, we see a lot of protests going on right now. In the UK, we see thousands of people. Their mass protests have taken to London streets and other cities across the country, urging the government not to conduct airstrikes in Syria. Get out of Syria. Don't bomb Syria. We don't want our troops there. We don't want our planes there. Period. That is it. There is no reason why the U.S., the coalition forces, and all these countries need to be in Syria. The only reason they're there is to remove Assad, to build the pipeline, to put in the central bank, to capture the natural gas, the oil, put it on the dollar that eventually go into Iran to prop the system up. Damascus has already said, when all the terrorists are out of the country and Syria is free of terrorism and Assad is re-elected president once again, they want Russia to come in and basically develop the oil with Syria. And right now they have data that oil and gas deposits on the shelf off the coast of Syria have enormous potential. And they want Russia to come in. They don't want the United States. They don't want England. They don't want France. They want Russia to come in and help them extract this. And guess what? The United States government central bankers are not going to let this happen. Now, we see a lot of excuses coming out of the U.S. government central bankers why Obama, his administration, decided not to bomb the convoys. And we see a former CIA deputy director, Michael Morell, saying that Obama didn't order the bombing of the Islamic State oil transportation infrastructure because he was concerned about environmental damage. Yes, he was concerned about that. He didn't go after oil wells. He didn't go after the convoys because, you don't want all that spilt oil. But they went after the refineries, which is very interesting. They went after the electrical grid in Aleppo, which is very interesting. They went after grain silos in Syria, which is very interesting. No, the reason why they didn't go after all of that is because it would stop the funding to their proxy army. That's why they didn't go in there. This is why Russia went in there and started to destroy the convoys of the oil tankers. The United States said, okay, we're going to destroy the convoys, but we're going to send down leaflets, warn the drivers to get out. And they staged an event where they bombed a couple of them. And then they said they ran out of ammunition. We cannot finish the job. So we could see what's happening right now. They're putting on a show for the American people and the world. And in reality, what's happening is they're really not bombing the convoys. Right now, Putin has approved the economic sanctions against Turkey. He signed a decree imposing a package of economic sanctions. The measures include banning several Turkish organizations, importing of certain goods, and employers in Russia will be prohibited from hiring Turkish nationals to work starting the 1st of January of 2016. We see Russia right now basically is bringing in the T-90 tanks. They arrived in Syria, and they pushed them up to Aleppo to join the army and to help out there. The T-90 tanks offer the Syrian army several features, and they're a little different than the T-55 and the T-72. They had the 2A 46M 125 smoothbore tank gun, a 4-stroke V12 piston engine, and they also have the explosive reactive armor on them. And we can see they're making a pushing the moderates, the Islamic State, completely out of the country. We see Turkey right now is boosting the arms supply into Syria. Weapons, ammunition, equipment, all being moved into Syria. And they're exchanging it for oil, antiquities that the Islamic State, which is the proxy army of the United States government central bankers, has looted from Syria. And all of this is being done right now to build up the forces and help them out. Now, Russia is saying they are ready to coordinate steps to block the border between Turkey and Syria. They want President Hollande to help with this and implement a framework to cut the flow of weapons and the oil from Syria into Turkey. And we know Erdogan's son is behind all of this. And we can see right now France is not going to work out a framework to cut off the border because they know that this helps the proxy army. Their main goal is always to get Assad. France has already said, yes, we need Assad gone. Assad cannot stay. And all of this is a huge pretext to basically set up a safe zone and invade Syria. This is what they're setting up at this point. So U.S. is out there saying that they demand Turkey to seal up the 100-kilometer border region with Syria. And it sounds fantastic. They're going to seal it up. They're going to make sure the Islamic State has no access. There's no way to bring the oil in. There's no ammunition going back and forth. And of course, this is a complete illusion. Coincidentally, 30,000 troops that they want to set up on the border to protect it is exactly what they estimated which would be needed to carve out a NATO-occupied safe zone. Coincidence? I think not. So right now, the U.S., along with the coalition forces, they're trying to make it look like, yes, we're going to seal this up, the border will be safe and sound, and we need the troops, 30,000 of them, to protect it. But what it looks like they're doing is they're going to be using these 30,000 troops to set up a safe zone in that area and might even be used to invade when needed. We already know that Turkey has moved more tanks up to the border. And all of this with the immigration crisis, where Turkey just released all these refugees out into Europe, it was used to create chaos. It was used to bring in Europe into the fight. And we can start to see what this was all done for. Basically, this is for the European army, a new model army. So Turkey dumped all these refugees onto Europe. Europe is setting up border controls. NATO is a fossil, and they want to set up a European army. Now, if a major NATO player like Turkey is dumped from NATO, then this means that the Western Central planners no longer have a multilateral beachhead position at the historic crossroads of Europe, Middle East, and Asia. This presents some key problems for the West and NATO. Who's going to lead in administrating Syria's newly proposed safe zone? It's an ideal opportunity for a new power to move into the void, which is the European Union. Back in March of 2015 on 21st Century Wire, they reported that basically European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker announced that the European Union now needs a standing army, or an EU army, to defend its values. To defend themselves against sudden existential threats. And he wasn't referring to the Islamic State, he was referring to Russia. And 2 months later, Juncker said the same exact thing. Such an army would also help us to form common foreign and security policies and allow Europe to take a responsibility in Europe. And we can see right now what they're doing is they need to bring together European nations. And with Turkey releasing the refugees under the direction of the United States government central bankers, we see Germany, France, Britain, and others planning the new EU army, and it's in the final stages of planning right now. The German Chancellor will ask Britain to stand aside as she promotes an ambitious blueprint to integrate continental Europe's armed forces. So, what do we see happening, and why do they need this? Well, we understand that the entire system is coming crumbling down. And we have the Eurozone crisis, the Greek economic meltdown, Spain, Portugal, Cyprus, Ireland, all their economies are a complete disaster, and it is spreading throughout Europe. They have the migrant crisis, which provides a perfect pretext to call for a new centralized federal EU border control agency. This fits perfectly into the EU army. So this was all planned. It was to create this system, to create chaos, and to bring Europe into the fight here by creating this EU army. The Paris attack was very important in order to join together with the Syrian conflict. So they needed everyone together. They needed an event, because what was happening was Russia was completely destroying their proxy army in Syria, and they needed a way to bring everyone together, and this is what is happening right now. And they're going to try to form this, and this is going to be the battleground of World War III. We can see everything is being set up, all pieces are being moved into place. And right now, from all of this happening, we see that countries are enacting these emergency policies, decrees, military actions, and for the security state, we could see that all of a sudden they're going to be creating this new EU FBI agency to help combat terror. They're also considering creating this new EU CIA to help with the situation. And we can see at this time, all of this is being prepared and readied to go into Syria full force to remove Assad, then eventually go into Iran. Because they're running out of time. Russia is destroying the proxy army inside of Syria. Assad and Putin are taking back towns and cities, liberating the people, and it's only a matter of time before we see another event occur. They need to get this war off the ground, and they're pushing as hard as they possibly can. And this is why everyone needs to be prepared. You need to make sure you have food. You need to make sure that you have supplies, medical supplies, cash on hand, gold and silver. Because we can see that everything is starting to accelerate. We see that they're not going to back off. We can see they're regrouping. We can see that we are coming to the point where this entire system is completely imploding on itself, and it's getting worse and worse by the day. If you haven't started preparing, you can go to lifereliance.com. You can get bug out bags, seeds, water filtration systems. You can customize your order to bring in the food, but you can see at this point in time, time is ticking away. The U.S. government, the central bankers, they realize this, and they're pushing this fast forward ahead. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.